Ready?
Yeah, here we are.
Here we are.
Yeah.
I'm DJ.
I'm Alex.
And this is, well, you know the show.
It's like with the fourth episode? No, it's Watch a Doc.
You know
Alex and
here we
DJ watch a doc. But you did see the thing, so you pressed the button, and if you didn't read it, then now you're listening to it.
That's right. Yeah. And this week we watched Pelé.
Pelé, actually. Pelé. Sorry about my partner here.
It's Pelé. Did you notice at the end of the movie, though, they said no matter how you pronounce it, because they said he was such a global icon, they went through all the ways people pronounced it.
Yeah.
They were like, whether he was Pelé,
yes.
Pelé. So I didn't feel as bad about my mispronunciation last week.
That's right.
But I thought I had it. It's not Pelé, it's Pelé.
Pelé, that's what I went through a few different sources. And the fact of the matter is it doesn't matter. The fact that they're saying it doesn't matter how you pronounce it. We're marketing this product. I mean, he was also well marketed, that guy. And Pelé, by the way, is not his real name.
No way.
No, it's just a nickname that he didn't like as a kid. Imagine that. You're loved by the world over, and everybody calls you by a nickname you hated.
But he probably grew to love it.
Of course he had to, no.
Fame and wealth will make you come around on
exactly.
a name.
He owned it.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about anybody who takes a word that's used against them and owns it, but I think we know what we're talking about here.
Oh yeah, I was trying to think of what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, no. I mean, there are many different groups that feel that way, where they have to take a negative name and own it.
And boy, did he own it. Pelé. So he was born in Brazil.
Yeah.
And just quickly became. His father was an excellent football player, and so he was actually. I forget his dad's name. Benigno. Yeah. So he was little Benigno growing up. Like he was in his dad's shadow essentially.
Yeah.
And then he's on the Brazil national team by the time he's 16. I mean, he outgrew that shadow.
Wait a second, you're jumping ahead though, because I love this. I love the moment when his dad cried because the team lost.
In the 1950 World Cup in Denmark, I think.
So see, you remember. God, you're good with names and dates. Thank God you're here.
Listen, you're going to look at it later and be like, it was 1952 in Copenhagen. Why did I believe that?
You know what? You say it with confidence, like a really good used car salesman.
That's the key.
Yeah. So 1950. His dad cried, which made me think sort of like, because by the way, here I am wearing this hat, like I'm the jock of these two. Yes, we're doing Pelé today. I'm the jock. I'm wearing my sports hat.
Yeah.
So
you don't care about sports at all.
No, I like it when it's happening. I like it when it's happening. Excellence of any kind I enjoy, but I don't follow sports. I can't. I'm not a follower.
I gotcha.
I'm an influencer, but the thing is...
You're an influencer of sports.
Well, not even close. I have no interest or influence, but Pelé, that's a different story. Watching this guy, I mean, I started replaying. I had to do replays.
You know, I'm not a soccer fan. I shouldn't say I'm not a soccer fan. I love soccer. I just didn't grow up on it, so I'm not a fanatic about it. Sure. But man, when you watch somebody... I watch soccer highlights all the time just for fun because they're amazing. And Pelé, his highlight, it was like he had a different gear than everybody else. When he took off down the field, I was like, did we just put it in fast forward by accident? He was amazing, man. Yeah. Amazing.
He was a skilled machine.
And then stopping on a dime, the footwork.
That's it.
And the patience. You know, really great athletes, they always have this patience where you can tell everything's slowed down in the moment.
That's
for
right.
them.
It's
beautiful to watch.
Yeah. That was one of the things I was listening. We were talking about like the factors that made him great, and that was it too. It was the idea of being able to see when an opening was going to happen. He was very good at predicting and seeing the whole picture in the moment, and like just being really right. That's the thing I think is what's probably so joyful of being that good in something like that, is you're completely present, and nothing like feeling present to the point of victory, like where it takes you to victory. And he's so present, and he has such a well-oiled machine that he works with.
Dude, you're absolutely right. And I was thinking about this while I was watching it, because I know you're not the biggest fan of sports, right? Mm-hmm. But you've asked me before, like, why I like sports. And, you know, I may not have articulated it well, but what you just said is the reason. There's an activity that you're completely present in, completely absorbed in. And Pelé made a great point later in the documentary where he said after he won his third World Cup, he felt such relief, which is like... goes hand in hand with the presence, because you know your job is done. Like when the clock strikes 0 or whatever sport you're playing, the 9th inning is over, you know it's over.
Yes.
There's no, like in life, there's so many gray areas. Am I still on this path? Where am I in life? Sports, it's like you work as hard as you can, you're in the moment, and then it's done.
Right.
And you might be in agony because you lost, but it's done.
Yes. And that's what people are hoping for when they listen to this podcast. They're in the moment, they really enjoy it, but when it's done...
Sweet relief. You were going to say, though, his dad crying at the 1950 Olympics.
Yeah. And I'll bounce around because I want to kind of get back to the idea of like how good he was and what made him good, because I found out a few things, and it's kind of interesting. It's again, like I don't love sports, but I love excellence, and I love watching kind of what makes for a great machine in a way. Like he has so much going for him in that way. But when I hear his dad crying about it, and it's so strange because it's like, on one hand, I have no connection with sports, and I would never see my dad crying about a game. It's just not important. I didn't grow up with it being that important. But in Brazil, being as poor as he was, I mean, it really was any kind of a ticket out of that.
Yeah.
And so the connect. So as much as I could kind of go like, "Hey, you're laughing about a game," it's like, nah. It's kind of like your only thing that you can really.
You mean you're crying about a game?
Or sorry, crying about.
Yeah.
I'm laughing, but not really mogging. But yeah, I can kind of get that where that is. So I mean, and to see your dad cry, and what did he say? He says, "I'm gonna win the World Cup for you, Dad. Don't worry." And of course,
he would have been about 10 years old at that time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that on one hand you think, wow, he's so prophetic. On the other hand, your father is crying, and you'll say anything to shut him up.
Yeah, exactly. Dad, I'm scared. Please stop crying. I'll win you the World Cup.
If this is is this important in this world? Okay, I'll do it.
But, I was a big sports fan growing up, and 10 years old was that sweet spot where you really felt it. Yeah. So I'm sure he was crying right there beside his dad.
Of course, yeah. I mean, it's everything. It's your whole world. Mm-hmm. I get it. Absolutely. But it is interesting that he then very quickly, immediately becomes great. Like at 17... he becomes great.
Yeah. Well, I would have loved to see him at a young age because I played, competitive hockey and baseball growing up.
Don't brag. I mean, I was picked last. But anyway, keep going.
Well, I wasn't the top, but I saw the top, like the people who ended up playing, and you could see they were great at 10. So, and there's legends of Sidney Crosby or Wayne Gretzky in hockey just scoring 12 goals a game. Sure. So I would have loved to see Pelé in Brazil at 10 years old just decimating these poor other little 10-year-olds, Yes. Sometimes people are late bloomers, but if he was playing for the national team by 16 or 17, there's no way he was a late bloomer. Yeah. He was probably a demon out there from the beginning.
Well, yeah, again, you look at how important it was for his dad and what his dad would have imparted to him, it's like, I absolutely, it would be impossible not to be as good as you could be, as young as you could be.
I actually... I want to know what the stats are because, like Steph Curry, to use an NBA analogy, Steph Curry is one of the best players in the world. His dad was an NBA player. Klay Thompson, his dad was an NBA player. There's a bunch of players in the NBA right now whose dads were in the NBA. So do you think you are immediately at an advantage when one of your parents played, or do you think there might be the opposite effect where you're like in their shadow and it can actually hurt you?
I would say that... if it's up against someone who doesn't have that, you already have an advantage just because of the fact that it's like what we talked about with any industry where it becomes a very big possibility. It's not this dream that people have. So right away, you're already like, you have a mindset of, I can do this. So then you will push yourself in a way that someone might, again, being a late bloomer, like sometimes it's like not a late bloomer. You just started late.
Yeah.
As opposed to someone who started as soon as you could walk.
Yeah, true. And then, another thing, so he joins that team when he's 16 or 17, wins the World Cup at that age. And when you watch that footage of him when he was that young, the charisma oozing out of that young man's face and body language, like 16 or 17-year-old Pelé, you're like, yeah, that man's a star without even seeing the soccer skill.
Well, that's it too. Like all the way through it, you could see he has a nice winning smile. He has a lot of charisma just to look at him, and you're thinking, I mean, that's not everybody has that. Some people are like really, particularly when you're like really skilled at something, but also being really skilled at everybody's favorite sport. I think at some point a little bit of confidence is going to seep in,
100%. What I loved was at that point when he said, I had a couple affairs. And so they're like, were you ever unfaithful to your wife? And he was like, I had a couple affairs. I'm like, in my head, I'm like, you had thousands of affairs. I mean, I'm not even trying to, he seems like a man of faith. So I'm like, I'm not trying to denigrate him. But there's just no way that with the amount of pressure on him and fame that he had and people throwing themselves at him everywhere, I mean, that dude was probably the Wilt Chamberlain of soccer.
Of course, yeah.
If anything, Wilt Chamberlain was probably the Pelé of
course.
You know?
Yeah.
And Brazilian women, I mean, they're beautiful. I'm watching, I'm like, this documentary is about soccer, but
also a very open culture. I mean, if you look at the, you know, there's an attitude about dress.
It's also sexy. I mean, I'd love to go to the.
Come on, your wife is in the other room, please. Don't go so far down that road. I mean, this is still.
She would say they're sexy too.
I don't know. Okay, that's fine. That's
you know,
okay. All right. I'm just.
We both appreciate beauty.
Okay.
It's ridiculous, and you're right. It's open, and like just seeing when they come back from like World Cup victories, everybody out on the street, like the amount of just like pure joy and exaltation that everybody's willing to like. You know, give off. Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah. It's like the energy. It's just a different energy. Like Canada doesn't do that. America, maybe some parts, but Brazil's on a different level.
Again, well, keep in mind too. Okay, so that's the thing is it's really hard to compare that level of commitment and excitement towards this national sport that is everything, particularly at that time, and you know, being that it is a sport that no matter where you are socially, you can root for it.
The other thing that struck me about him saying he had a couple affairs was he said, and I even had a few children out of it, but only found out about it after. And that made me go, there were so many moments in the movie that made me harken back to a golden age where you could just conceive a child with a random woman in a place and just not know about it. That's not what makes it the golden age. But I just mean they didn't have the internet. They didn't. So like even like when he first left Brazil and went to Europe for the first time, he was seeing white people people were like scratching his skin, trying to get his black skin. I'm just like. So
you hearken for an age of easy anonymous sex. Infidelity as well, and a time
delinquency as a parent,
and a time where races were seen as almost alien, like truly alien. Where how is it possible that can I rub the color off your skin?
Now listen, maybe hearken wasn't the right word.
Yeah,
but I will say that. Nobody has that intense curiosity anymore. Like, you know that there's people of different colors all around the world from a young age because you have the internet and you just know. So I'm obviously not saying it's cool that people were trying to rub the skin color off them, but it's a different time. It's it's mind-blowing to think that was an actual... You know what else was crazy about that time? The amount that people were always touching them. Now celebrities and athletes always have this like bubble around them of security. Reporters were always like grabbing them and pulling them back. I was like, get your hands off Pelé.
That's true. Man. I hated that. By the way, there's that one reporter that grabs him and starts asking him a question, and he's like, I don't understand. And he goes, oh, come on, you speak English. Like it was talk about privilege and entitlement and the fact that you are speaking to a man who's from Brazil and he has to speak English.
Yeah.
And then he looked dopey after that, by the way, when the interpreter, just actually did his job.
Yeah.
But he should feel shame. That's all I'm saying.
Who should feel shame?
The reporter.
Oh, yeah. Well, did you see, they didn't even really connect it, but I thought it was a cool connection when Pelé, in his later years in this documentary in real time, saw all his old football buddies. And he told them to speak English or he wouldn't talk to them. Yeah. I think that was him because they probably got that all the time everywhere they went. So he was making a callback to 50 years ago.
Right.
I feel like that moment that you just called out was what he was calling out with when he said that to his teammate.
I see. Oh.
Do you know what I mean? When they were all like by the pool, when they were all like 80 years old, and he comes out, he wheels out on his wheelchair.
That's right.
And he's like, if you're not speaking English, I don't want to talk to you.
Yeah, that's right. Huh?
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
That's exactly. Yeah, you're right. That was exactly. I guess he heard that a lot.
He was such a, he's still alive. His presence is so calming.
Yeah, it's true,
and the fact that his nickname was the King, but all of his teammates were totally fine to recognize him as such because real kings are servants, if I may go a little biblical with you, right?
Sure.
So he put the team at the front of his priorities.
One of the greatest shots they showed was when he passed it. so beautifully.
Yeah, to Jairzinho. Yeah, I know that name too. He's another Brazilian legend, but I'm not pronouncing it right.
Yeah.
But that guy was amazing too. That was his most famous goal, and it was Pelé passing it to him.
Just gently and generously.
Yeah.
So and he did have that attitude. He did have a lot, kind of this humility about I'm not that big a deal. I'm just a person and all that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Although I did hear one time in another thing where they said that somebody going up against one of the Italians in the 1970 when it was the big World Cup Mexico, which they show at the end there. But he said something about being up against him as a defender, and he said he was telling himself beforehand, he's just skin and bones, just like all of us. And then I met him in person. No, he isn't. Yes, I love that. I thought he's not skin and bones. He is some super being from another planet. He was, because the way he moves. Apparently, by the way, the soccer balls were heavier back then too. So
really?
So doing all that, like to compare what you're doing now versus then, to do what he does but with a heavier ball. I mean, I'm saying this as a person who has no idea. I'm not a soccer player, but
it's like every sport. Tennis, they had the wooden rackets.
Sure.
Hockey, everything's so much more advanced. Yeah, so you can't even compare generationally. But his skill set looked like he would still dominate now.
But isn't it possible that as long as you got your legs strong, maybe a heavier ball would be easier to control because it just doesn't pop so easily. You can it's not as fast, but it could be.
It might give you that dexterity.
Yeah, because you got some weight to work with. It's not like a balloon that's just going to get away from you.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was easier. Yeah. Anyways, a lot of guys were talking about it was heavier back then. I was like, wait a second, maybe that's actually easier for the moves he was going to pull.
But think about how strong your legs have to be to do that over the course of a game.
And he could stop on a dime. There's a lot of things that
just
they
like
talk
a
about.
medicine ball for a whole game. He was a force of nature, and when you play against great athletes, or even just seeing him in person, like when I've seen live basketball or whatever, you're like, we're not the same.
No,
like you're a different. It's like meeting a genius too.
Sure.
I've seen way more athletes in real life than I've seen geniuses, if we're gonna count it. But when you meet somebody who's just extremely smart, and you're like, we're just not the same. You're better than me in that area by far.
I like that in that area. I like the way that sort of downplays. You're definitely, when it comes to being a pure genius.
You're intelligent. Well, I told you what I do to make myself feel better, right? If I see somebody and they have too much going for them, if they're smart, handsome, and a great athlete, I tell myself they must be impotent.
Of course.
That's what I do. Nobody has it all.
No, that's great. That's great. And it's the one area you can't see, so that's the one you go for.
Exactly.
Right below the belt, that's where you hit him.
Oh, yeah. Okay, let me ask you this about Pelé. Yeah. So he won 3 World Cups.
Yes.
And one of them he was injured for.
Mm.
Does that count as him winning the World Cup in your mind? He was there. He got injured in the first or second game.
Oh, I see what you're doing. Yeah. That's a tough one, really. But I don't think that, I think he's like, it's really a question of how he feels about it. I think because in a way it's like, does he think like, I don't fully count that one. What I count is the one that I did win. Remember that one? He probably focuses on the, He
did say the 1970 World Cup was his shining moment when they won.
Yes. But, part of the reason why he said it was a relief at the end, he said that, was because he felt there was like a lot of pressure, kind of this whole, the pressure from Brazil, but also like from the government. There's that whole thing too that happened that they talk about in the doc is that there was a shift of power, that it went to a junta.
Yeah. What was it called? The I-5A or the
AI-5?
AI-5.
Yeah, it was like this new. We're now allowed to surveil and torture, and it was pure. It became a dictatorship, and that was the thing is that when people comparing him like when there was that scene too where he had completely been apolitical up to that point and after that point. And some people were critical. Some people, I guess, maybe aren't critical. He's not too critical of himself because he's like, I just know football and I don't know, I just know that if I can make the world a better place through football, then I'm going to focus on that. But then people will compare to Muhammad Ali and Vietnam But the difference is that he would go to prison, whereas he might be tortured to death. Pelé, I mean, and that was one of the guys who's one of the people who were being a little forgiving of it. It's like, you know what? A dictatorship's a dictatorship. I mean, this is a different scenario.
He said, if you've lived through a dictatorship, you know it. Yeah, I mean, and being famous in a country that's in the throes of a dictatorship doesn't grant you that much immunity. They'll still throw a bag over your head and prove a point to the country.
Totally.
If you speak out. So,
totally, yes. I mean, well, listen, either you are on our side or we make an example of you.
Yeah, because you're the fact that you have all this power, we need to make an example of you because we can't have people following your lead.
Feeling that people in power can now, and it can trickle down to the people. And
So, but the one thing I will say about that is Muhammad Ali, maybe the government wasn't going to come and do it in such an overt way, but he had FBI following him. Sure. He's obviously in 1960s era America as a black man. Sure. So yes, I wouldn't have wanted to be in either situation. But Muhammad Ali wasn't just scared of prison in that situation.
Sure. Yeah. No, assassinations were happening.
Yeah.
So yes, there is that. And also Ali's a fighter, and this guy's a football player. He plays football. He's with the foot, and you hit it very nicely, generally. As he was a fighter and cocky to begin with. So it was partly personality, too, I think. Yeah.
True. And, I mean, when the government is... this guy's name, the general who overtook Brazil, Medici, they said he was the most brutal, violent leader Brazil's ever had. Sure. So, I mean, on one hand, hey, this is no time to be apolitical, Pelé. Like, you got to speak up. On the other hand, like, no. Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to...
Yeah, I don't know if... Here's the thing. Maybe I might change things. There's a good chance I probably won't. And I've never been interested in torture as a vocation.
Yeah. And he was right. You could say it's a cop-out. But he did change the world with soccer. Sure. And this was another thing I thought about, how you don't necessarily love sports while I was watching this. It's never just sports, right? Like that, the 1970 World Cup was in the throes of, a violent coup in Brazil. Yeah. There's, all sorts of pressure. Basically, the whole coaching staff had been military staff by that point. Yeah. It was pretty much stated that he could not miss that World Cup, even though he had hinted at retirement before. The government was like, no, you're playing. Yeah. So it's never just about sports, because these are real people playing within a larger society. So it's crazy to watch like things like that 1970 World Cup and just see all these factors bleeding in. Mm-hmm. So the relief that he felt after that game was over, it wasn't just a soccer game is over. Right. Yeah. And when they said that if they hadn't won that World Cup, things were going to get a lot worse in Brazil, isn't that such a crazy concept?
Well, he said another line that he said was that I don't want to be Pelé today. Like, it was like he was so nervous leading up to it. Is I don't want to be Pelé. And I mean, it's just pressure. But it's bizarre because, like, think about that and then think about he was still incredible under pressure.
Yeah. And that's what makes the greats. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. I mean, he was just I do like watching. I did enjoy watching some of those plays, though, we talked about that before, where he just kind of flipped it over a guy.
Yeah, the defender was right in front of him. He flipped it over him. And then before he kicked it in the net, he faked a header.
That's it.
And then the goalie bit on that, and then he let it go down and kicked it. I mean, there were like three amazing moves in a half a second.
Exactly what it was.
It was crazy.
Exactly what it was. To watch it, it really was like, I kind of felt, even in that grainy black and white, I felt a thrill in my chest from that moment. It was just so like, it was incredible. It was like sprightly. It wasn't of this earth. And that's why I understand he wasn't skin and bones. But it is interesting. Speaking of that, by the way, the grainy footage, that was another thing that came up when I was looking into Pelé as a figure that has lasted the test of time and all that, is that part of his luck in being the iconic figure he is that he came up at the right time when the technology allowed him to be visible around the world. So even though you might see him live and all that sort of thing, the fact that television was now, the World Cup was televised and people around the world saw this man move like this. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was wow. It was like everybody was watching this going, wow, this is that was what it was. It was like this is a legend being born. They're watching that. And
it was like, if you do the timeline, I'm just making this connection now, but when did the Beatles first appear on Ed Sullivan? 65?
Yeah, I think that was it, 64, 65, something like that, 64 maybe.
And that was Pele's heyday as well.
That's exactly it.
So yeah, those, everybody who was the best at what they did when television was coming into form, you had millions upon millions of people all tuned in to watch you. Yes. There weren't, 1,000 different streaming services. Yeah. It was incredible. You were watching moving pictures on your TV of, this guy who was absolutely dominating on the pitch.
Well, yeah, that's the thing is he looked like no one else.
Yeah,
like his moves were like no one else's, and so I can imagine though, man, just going on. Look, this started happening when he was 17. You imagine like you're in high school and you are now a world champion, and from then on, just for the next 13 years, everywhere you go, people love you. They just love you everywhere you go. Is it almost too much? Would that get to be a bit much where you're like, at first this was exciting and all of it. Now it's like, it's a big responsibility to be loved by so many people.
I mean, he said it at one point. He was like, I couldn't go anywhere. I didn't know what to do.
What do you do? It's too much love. You know what I mean? Spread it around. But I do like I thought it was really interesting that it was that. And then even further, I think the 1970 World Cup was the first color televised in color. And that's another thing people talk about, the fact that you see that guy doing those moves in these bright canary yellow uniforms. It just became like, that's one of the reasons it became just world popular. It was just this fresh new thing in color, guy playing at his best with the yellow, a lot of yellow.
That yellow jersey, I want to look that up and buy that jersey with the green number 10 on the back and just a little Brazil. Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah.
And you'd wear that kind of like everywhere?
I'll wear anything.
Oh, okay. All right.
Is there a color I shouldn't wear? Is that what you said?
I'm just, I don't know. I don't know if I'd feel
Joan Rivers over here, the fashion police?
I feel like being a white, I just feel like, this is the fashion police. This is the woke police. As a white guy walking around in a Pelé shirt okay today? I don't know.
What do you? I mean, come on! I'm only allowed to pay tribute to white people.
We'd prefer it if you just.
That's worse. Oh no! I only wear David Beckham jersey.
It's ridiculous.
I support my people. Thank you.
Do you know that actually I have a cap? I could have brought it today. Actually, I have a baseball cap that I bought. It's like one of those like wool-looking old-fashioned ones, and it was done to make it look vintage, just like this. Actually, this by the way is Vancouver. What is it? What's the Vancouver, what's it for? What's it stand for? I just actually realized I blanked on this stupid, I bought this hat. It's actually a baseball team that lasted for like a year and a half.
Oh, I've never heard of them.
It's a W, right? Is that what it's up there?
It's an M.
M, yeah. The Vancouver Mounties.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Terrible name, right?
The Vancouver Law Enforcement.
It's pretty much. Yeah. I think that's what it was.
Get their man.
I think it was Mounties or Mountains. Could it be Mountains? Vancouver Mountain. That would be good for
That'd be good.
Big.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, I have one that's like a New York one that it actually, I bought it from like Marshall's and I was like, oh, that's cool. It's nice. And on the back after I bought it, I noticed it's actually the Black Yankees. It's the, it was actually specifically the Negro Leagues.
And how do you feel about wearing that?
I don't anymore.
I think you should. I think it's wrong to not wear it.
I gave it a little hiatus. I want everything to blow over a little bit. I'll put it back on again.
But who's going to get upset that you're wearing a...
I don't know. I like to make a big deal of this. It adds the little drama I have in my life.
I gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Well, let me ask you this then. Was Pelé wrong for not speaking up during the coup? With all that power he had, we said we understand why he didn't. But do you think even knowing that he should have been more like Muhammad Ali and tried to be voice of the people? Or do you 100% absolve him of not saying that?
Yeah, it's kind of tough, right? Because he's like, I thought I was put on this earth to just be good at the football, and I would be, and it's like maybe that's just the best that torture. I know. Sounds scary. Torture sounds scary. I mean, I don't know. It's a tough one.
Torture sounds scary. You're damn right. I wouldn't last 10 seconds.
No, that's what I'm saying. So it's like...
I would squeal like a pig.
Yeah, so I'm like, well, if I'm going to squeal anyway, I may as well do a little dance while I'm squealing, and everybody can have some fun.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I'd crack under pressure, even when you learn like that. You know, the FBI and CIA had a file on like Muhammad Ali or any subversives that they followed around. If I saw like a person 2 days in a row and realized I was being followed, I wouldn't sleep a wink. I'd crack knowing that people were even thinking about me in that way.
I don't like it.
No,
I don't. No, I mean. Maybe if I joined the resistance, I'd change my attitude, you know, because then I feel like I'm resisting. But if it's just, you know, yeah. No, I think I'm a coward. I'm sorry, I just had to do the calculations.
Yeah, no, I definitely wouldn't have done anything in Pelé's situation.
Sure. Oh, okay.
But, you know.
That's a tough one to swallow, you know. You just, you're being honest with yourself. I'm just saying that takes a lot of courage.
To admit I'm a coward. You know what's crazy about him is he retired at 29. Like athletes now play longer and longer. He was only 29 at that last. That's a young man.
Right.
Like LeBron's still playing. He's 36 now, I think. I don't know how to say his name, but Zlatan Ibrahimovic. He's like a really funny, amazing soccer player who's been around for a while. He's got to be up near 35 or 40 now.
Yeah, the fact that he stopped at 30 is very strange. Yeah.
But he started when he was 16 on a professional level. Yeah. There wasn't the same kind of athletic treatment. I don't think.
Sure.
I think it was expected.
That's true too. You're right. Yeah, you're right. Actually, the athletic treatment is another thing I don't think about.
And then he came over to America and played for the New York Cosmos.
That's right. Which a big splash.
Yeah, but that league must have folded because
pretty much, yeah.
So it wasn't enough.
No, it was sort of like totally buoyed by his worldwide fame, and then they hoped that it would kickstart. But it never kickstarted.
Kickstart. Did you mean to do that?
I didn't. I just have sometimes the Lord flows through me as I am a conduit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You don't even know it's flowing through you. Somebody has to tell you, did you mean to make a pun? You're like, that's the big guy upstairs. I blacked out.
I thought I felt a tickle. I guess it was flowing through.
I loved the random little... So... I played sports growing up, and every year you would have a different coach. Sometimes you would have the same for a few years in a row, but usually you'd be like, I hope I have a good coach this year. You just didn't know. Sure. And an asshole coach ruins your whole season. You're like, fuck this guy, man. Yeah. They have power trips. They don't know what they're doing, whatever the case is. And that one guy who was his coach leading up to the 1970 World Cup,
Saldana, I was going to say Saldana, yeah.
That dude just like talking shit about Pelé for no reason in the press.
Just it was all ego, it felt like. It was just sort of like, you know what? It's almost like he was saying like, you know what? He needs to be knocked down a few pegs, this Pelé who's a world champion. Why? What is it? And Pelé's like, what am I dealing with this guy for? Why is this happening?
And then even what he said about the government. He's like, me and the president have a lot in common, but I don't tell him who to pick for his cabinet ministers, and he doesn't tell me to pick for my soccer team.
Yeah.
It's like, are we going to see this guy alive anymore?
See, he's the one who's got the balls that Pelé can kick the ball. He just may not have a couple big ones between his legs.
Yeah. Well, geez, I don't even want to say that about him because, my God, what a decision that is. Like, Michael Jordan would never say if he was Democrat or Republican because there's a famous quote that could be apocryphal.
I think it's one.
Yeah. It could be made up. But
that's better, too.
He said... he doesn't dabble in politics because Republicans and Democrats both buy shoes. Basically, he was saying, I choose money over...
Yeah.
But Pelé, it wasn't even money. It was more than that.
But it was that, too, though. That was another thing I found out about him. He's compared to Michael Jordan in the sense that he was pretty quick to make a buck wherever he could. I mean, there's famously, he goes to tie his shoes in their Pumas, so that way people might want to buy some Pumas after that. In the middle of a game... He stops to tie his shoes just to show his Pumas. So he was easily purchased. He was happy to be purchased.
I'm not mad at that.
No, that's fine. He's opportunistic, just so that way you can make the money. Everybody thinks you're great. I mean, they're asking you.
Yeah, it's not like you're endorsing something you don't believe in. He's wearing those Puma shoes.
Totally. I wear Pumas. I like the Pumas. They got a cool style.
I love Puma.
Yeah.
We both love Puma. We'd wear Puma
anytime. In fact, I think we might want to @ Puma on this when you post this one.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Sponsored by Puma.
Yeah, just
on the house this time. Puma.
Sponsorship. You get your first one free, but Puma, contact us.
So I just loved watching this. It was a peek at Brazil at that time, the turmoil, but also the joy, the fact that everybody just was so invested in this game.
Yes.
A silly little game is far from silly when there's that much invested in it. It's it dealt with things like racism. It dealt with things like, fascism, dictatorships.
That was one of the things I think I wanted to mention earlier. Hold your thought, but just the racism aspect, the fact that he he solved the mongrel complex of Brazil, because so the Brazil really didn't feel like they were worthy of the globe until then, and then they started to feel like, you know what, you might be Italian or French or English and you got your thing, but we can kick your ass in this ball game.
Loved it. Yeah, the mongrel complex. Yeah. And soccer's the thing that helped him get over that.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. So that was a nice thing. But I think you were going down a road here after you said racism and then you said something else.
No, I think that was pretty much it. But the one thing that just popped up into my mind is that one former government minister who was like, was there torture involved? He's like, of course there was. When they asked him, he's like, what was my role in signing the IA, or what was it called?
AI5, yeah.
The AI5, he's like, I signed it. He was like the guy, and then he was like, was there torture involved? Of course there was. And he said something that I took umbrage with. He said, humans are the only species that when they get power, will use it to kill their own species. I was like, that's not true at all.
Completely. He said that with the confidence, like he was speaking some universal truth that no one would agree with.
Yeah. It's like well documented.
Yeah.
Most, but many species do that.
I don't know if you know this, but there's a thing called Darwinism, and it's about being competitive. And when you're competitive, sometimes somebody else has got to go down.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
I know.
Maybe not in a industrial way, or what am I trying to say? In a efficient manner that the humans can. Humans are pretty good at gunning down a lot of people.
Yeah.
We can do more. We can do more in shorter amount of time than any other species.
That's true.
That's what we can say. We could say that.
That's what he meant to say.
Maybe that's what he meant to say.
Yeah. The one thing that blew my mind was, I'm not much of a history buff, was that they said the dictatorship, the overthrow of the government was part of a U.S. strategy to prop up dictatorships in countries to de-incentivize the USSR from spreading communism around.
That's right. Yeah, that was propped up. That's right. It was like the threat of communism is why they kind of propped up the Medici dictatorship.
It's wild because, I've heard of them doing that in, let's say, Nicaragua or other places, Afghanistan even, or Iran, but I'd never heard about that in Brazil. And I'm just like I said, I'm not a history buff, but I'm like, how many of these countries?
Everywhere.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, it's because the poor were getting sick of being treated poorly and then communism sounded like a really good idea. Although I wonder if it was that much of a threat, or those people who wanted to have the coup said, hey, U.S., you want to help us out? Look at these communists over there. They may even planted a few pamphlets. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? Because there was so much paranoia back then. They'd be like, whatever, on the off chance, we'll just throw you in there. We just got to make sure that if you're there, then communism can't be there. All right, we got a deal.
Yeah, but it was just the turmoil is mind-blowing, because even when they won the 1970 World Cup and it was this huge relief, even then their happiness and joy is almost weaponized against them, because it's like, okay, are you content with your soccer winning now? Okay, now shut up about all your rights being taken away, or like it's never pure happiness, because if they would have lost, now the country falls into even more disarray. But then when they win, it's like, okay, you're all distracted, we can keep doing the horrible things we were going to do. Like it just felt like kind of a lose-lose even when they won. Way they framed it.
Wow. Yeah, no, I never thought of it that way, but yeah, that is true. It's this kind of bittersweet, like they have so much joy for in that moment, but it is at the price of actually dealing with the real situation they're in.
Yeah.
That distraction. Yes. Sounds a little bit like, to me, we're setting up, the fear of what could happen in any country. For example, the country that you live in or I live in. Mm-hmm. And the fact that people are distracted enough, and also the idea of it could happen, like, we never thought that. I think that was it too, is you had this kind of attitude of, we never thought it could happen here kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you hear that and I'm like, yeah, I think a lot of people feel that in whatever country they're in.
Yeah.
Until
it happened.
Exactly. And that's sort of what thinking like, I guess this is a democratic country on some level until it isn't.
Yeah, it was democratic. Yeah. It was, Yeah, well, a lot to be scared of, but...
Yeah. But Let's end on that. Let's end on that. Can we do a whole? I'd love to have like musical cues that we have, and one of them is it's like a nice old fashioned.
You got a good singing voice. Can you sing "Let's End on That" again?
Yeah. Sure. Let's end on that.
Well, that's beautiful.
Something like that. Big band behind me. Sort of in the tune of "That's All There Is." You know that song?
No.
Yeah, we should put that in a link in the "That's All There Is," my friend.
Okay.
Yeah.
Old classic?
It's an old classic, and it's basically, really, is that all there is?
Do you have anything you want to add that is dark? Because I'm going to say I have a happy note that I think would be good to end on. But if there's any more darkness you want to descend
There was a bit
into.
of darkness because I remember there's that one thing where he was watching himself play. Remember they had the projector and he's sitting there after he tosses aside I love the way he threw aside his walker, by the way. Like, get this thing away from me as I sit down. And then he sat and he projected highlights of him watching himself play. And he was like kind of rubbing his chin, like he kind of looked like he was a little, like not just enjoying, he was kind of thinking about it or maybe anxious about it. And I just thought like, I guess that's true. If they showed me one of my comedy specials on a projector and I was sitting there, I'd probably be rubbing my chin kind of half anxiously. God, do I have to watch this? But anyway, that's me and my comedy. I don't want to, that's really not.
And just imagine if your comedy special had been watched by half of the planet.
Well, then I'd be doing a lot better than I am right now. Why are you bringing this up?
How do you do any better than this?
Well, no, it's fun. I'm with good friends having good time.
But I love watching people, because I was just saying this to Madge, if I may mention my comedy for a moment, because Conan's over this week. Like Conan ended his show,
right? And
I was lucky enough to perform on his show. And I was just telling her that the first time I appeared on Conan, it feels like a dream. Like, I mean, my memory's so bad that like I know it happened, but I can't tell you like what the drive was like there, so I can only imagine like Pelé, being in the winter of his life, looking at highlights from 1964. That's gotta seem like, I mean, maybe he's got a better memory than me, but I imagine by that age, that had to feel like like you're watching a movie.
That's it. Yeah, it's another life, another person. You kind of look and you're like, oh yeah, that was me. Huh? I was like, yeah, that's just, I just had an embarrassing flashback. Okay, there was that. I remember that. You have those moments too, I'm sure, when you're watching things. Brings it all back. But of course, there's gonna be a huge. That's why looking at it, he probably really is sort of watching himself, going, yeah, I think I do remember that. That was a pretty sweet move, though. Fuck, I was good.
Yeah, goddamn. Yeah. Oh boy, was I good. Yeah. I think there's something so beautiful about watching people in the later stage of their life reflect and talk about what they've learned. And I feel like elderly people are an untapped resource in our society, especially in Western
society. To meet, or
yes,
sorry,
exactly.
Just trying to help again.
Well, eventually, after we've extracted all their thoughts, then we turn them into meat. But no, I feel like maybe this is just a Western society thing, but we just kind of like put them in a corner somewhere. But there's so much that they've learned and lived, especially a guy like Pelé, that I just love watching them talk about how they felt, trying to retrieve those memories, trying to capture what the moment felt like when they were in it. And it's just, it's really beautiful, especially when, I mean, I don't mind them even if they're assholes, because that's kind of funny too, where you're like, wow, 80 years later, they're still a huge dick.
It's kind of funnier in a way, seeing guys who are dicks who are assholes. Because you know what the thing of it is you look at that and you go like, you are an asshole, but now you're an old asshole.
Yeah.
Deal with it.
Yeah.
Because when you're old, life is a bit of an asshole to you.
Yeah. I loved seeing all the old teammates be assholes to each other, because it probably brought them back to just, the locker room. Or
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was definitely nice. Like, I think there was some talk about like him like really enjoying that time. Like he realized he didn't usually come out that much, and to actually have that time with his old teammates was like a highlight for him. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I thought it was a beautiful movie. I didn't know much about Pelé. I knew he was a legend, and I knew he had won World Cups, and I knew his face very well because he was so well marketed even before my time. I was born in 86, and I still knew who Pelé was very well.
He did a Viagra commercial.
Did he?
Yeah. Yeah, we can maybe include the link for that too if you want. I saw it. It's a Viagra commercial, but it's kind of very like questionable. People say that Peter Serafinowicz, what's his name again? I can always forget.
Stephanopoulos?
No, the guy who played like the Tick in the recent series or whatever. He's a British actor, very funny and excellent voice, and he did the voice for Pelé. Anyway, that's a side note. But there is there is a Viagra commercial from like 2000 or something like that. Yeah, he's old. He's trying to say, hey, if
can you show it to me right now? I can.
Yeah, if he needs to use it, he needs to use it. Yeah, I can call it up right now.
Let's look at this Viagra commercial, and then we'll end it on that.
Yeah, sure. It could be actually. Hold on, it could be better doing it on my phone
Or maybe this Viagra commercial will be so good that we'll be hanging out for another 4 hours, and we'll have to call our doctor.
Oh.
Huh?
Oh, yeah. You know what that was like? You know what that was?
What?
That was a Viagra joke. Really big during the Reagan era.
Hola. Hasta la semana pasada, él tenía miedo de hablar con su médico sobre sus dificultades de erección. Ahora, él no piensa en hablar. Como muchos hombres, él ya se ha beneficiado del tratamiento. Los problemas de erección son comunes. Habla con tu médico. Yo lo haría.
That's great. That's not even the one I was talking about. There's another one, but that's probably good enough for now.
That's great. I love that he's just on a soccer field talking about Viagra.
Yeah, while other people are acting out the situation. That was great. Yeah, he just comes in at the end and says, he says, listen, I'm playing soccer because I'm still a very virile man. But if you have a problem like that guy, maybe we can help you out.
And it was weird seeing Pfizer at the end there. You're like, oh yeah, you think of them as the vaccine people, but they're the Viagra people.
Yeah, Pfizer.
This vaccine is a side hustle for them.
No, seriously though. I mean, like once you make it big with Viagra, I mean, you're capable of anything. I think.
Sure.
They got all the money.
Yeah. Yeah, once this COVID thing is cleared up, people are still going to want their boners, right? All right. Well, that concludes us talking about Pelé.
Pelé.
Loved it. I loved the whole movie.
Good time. It was a good time, yeah.
I love sports. I love sports, man. I felt like I was back there watching those World Cups. I was like, I mean, even just feeling the crowd, it was like, man, it was pure pandemonium, and I loved it.
You loved it. I knew while I was watching, I was like, oh, he's probably beaten off to this. I was watching, I was sort of like, yeah, no, it's great, it's fine. But yeah, it's exciting for someone like you.
Yeah, it's sports.
Yeah.
Sports, baby.
I was picked last.
But you can still love it.
After there was me and then the girl, and then they picked the girl, and I was the last one picked.
But did you enjoy it when you played? Like after you were picked last?
I mean, it's usually not as much fun watching everybody throw a ball around.
Yeah. Okay, I understand.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you're older now.
Yeah.
You're.
My dad didn't throw the ball around.
No.
No. Sometimes he'd hit me with a stick. He'd throw the stick around.
Did he really?
Nah, I mean, it was just one time. Anyway, but.
It was an accident.
Whatever. He didn't know the situation. I get it.
Okay, well, next week we're watching Gringo.
Yeah.
The documentary about John McAfee.
This is very interesting to me.
He just passed away.
I know very little about him. You told me a little bit more about him.
Yeah.
Big things have just happened to him, and that's death.
Yeah. He's the creator of the McAfee antivirus software.
Everybody knows
And then
that.
he ended up living in Belize. Wildlife. I've seen this documentary, but I saw it a couple years ago, and I'm so excited to rewatch it. I'm sorry that he passed away, but I mean, his whole life, the last however many years, has been crazy and conspiratorial. So watch Gringo and join us while we talk about it next week.
Yeah.
And be sure to call us at 707-506-6257. You can send a text. You can leave a voicemail.
All those numbers are on the keypad, so they'll be all there for you to choose.
That's right. And you can also comment on YouTube. We'd love to hear from you. So
yeah,
that was Pelé. Next week's Gringo.
Thanks for
I'm
watching
DJ.
and listening. I'm Alex.
We'll see you next week.
All right, bye-bye then.